And I would like to welcome everybody this morning and thank you for joining us, and especially thank our panelists who are the feature of today's session, as well as our partners, and we'll introduce everybody a little bit more formally in a moment. But would like to thank our panelists, our partners, and all of you for having interest in today's session. We're hoping that it will be informative, that we'll have a little bit of a lively discussion, and we will have lots of room for questions and answers at the end. So don't worry that you won't be able to get information if we don't address it directly. So I'll start with introductions. My name is Janice Maddy, and I'm the Director of Research and Innovation Partnerships with the Queen's Partnerships and Innovation team. And I'm joined today by three partners: Firan from OCI, or Ontario Centres of Innovation, Alex from CENGN. I've lost track of where Alex is on my screen. There's Alex. And Hassan from ENCQOR. And there's Hassan on my screen. Hassan, if you'd like to raise your hand so people can see you, that would be great as well. Thanks so much. And then we have our three panelists today. Dan Desjardins, who is the president and CEO of King's Distributed Systems. And Dan, perhaps you can raise your hand if I don't even see you on my screen. Oh, there you are.
Good morning, everyone.
Good, excellent. And John Garofalo, who is the president and owner of JIC Design. John, if you could raise your hand. Thank you. And finally, we have Adam Allore, who is the founder and CEO of Wavve Boating. Adam, if you could raise your hand. Wonderful. So thank you very much for agreeing to join us today and share your experiences. From a logistics standpoint, there are just two notes we wanted to mention. One is that we are recording today's session, so it will be available following the workshop. We now have a YouTube channel where we're posting all of our recordings so that people who weren't able to participate during the scheduled time can access the materials following the session. And we would also ask you and invite you to post your questions using the chat function throughout the discussion today. We won't address your questions as they come up. We'll save them until the Q&A session, and Amanda will bring those forward for review and discussion after we've gone through the formal parts of the presentation. So from an agenda standpoint, we have 5 topics today. Five agenda items. The first is that Firan will provide us with a very brief overview of programs through OCI, CENGN, and ENCQOR. We will then do founder and company introductions, and that will launch us into our panel discussion, and then we'll wrap up for our Q&A, and we're allocating about 20 minutes to the Q&A portion. And so we're hoping that you'll find this to be very informative and give your company ideas as to how you can access and benefit from the programs that you're going to hear about today. So with that summary of the agenda, I'll turn it over to Firan and ask her to provide a brief introduction from a program standpoint. Over to you, Firan.
Thank you so much, Janice. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, and especially thanks for our CENGN and ENCQOR partners, as well as the 3 amazing company founders. So I think it's going to be a very, very fun discussion today. Mainly, we're going to talk about their experience, their business, and how it can benefit to your company and your moving forward growth journey. So on the program side, let me introduce quickly about myself and the organization, as well as the 2 key programs we're going to give everybody more information today. So my name is Firan. I work for the Ontario Centre of Innovation. So a lot of people might know us as OCE. We just got rebranded since the new year. We are the provincial level of the innovation agency, mainly supporting the Ontario-based companies on their growth journey through our network, through our different grants and investment programs, helping them to reach to our next level of their R&D specifically and generate more IPs. So today we're going to mainly focusing on 2 programs on our list. One is ENCQOR 5G. The other one is Next Generation Network. So at this moment, I'm going to quickly show you 1 slide which I won't take too much time from the panelists because you're going to learn more about their experience from their talking. So let me quickly share my slide here. Janice, let me know if you can see it. Can everybody see my screen?
Looks pretty.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
I was on mute, sorry, but yes, it's up.
Awesome. Yeah, so as I mentioned, OCE has designed different core programs to supporting different initiatives and different sectors. So today we are mainly going to talk about next generation network program, as well as this ENCQOR 5G. All the three companies that joined us today, last year, they were successfully awarded on either one or two of these two programs, which they find it was beneficial, so we can learn from their experience. So on a program level, so ENCQOR 5G, from the name, as you can see, it's related to the 5G network. So OCI was able to partner with CNR, Ericsson, these large private sector corporations, along with our federal government's support. We are able to put up this multi-year program. Mainly, we have this 5G pre-commercial testbeds available for both Quebec and Ontario, two provinces. Currently, I think there are 5 testbeds up running, which is only available for these two province company for access. So SMEs in these two provinces, they can do a lot of 5G related development and testing work to accelerate their 5G pace to be compatible for the very soon 5G network available for Canada. Next generation network, these are another very valuable programs for our SMEs. So similar idea. So we also have a testbed, but this testbed infrastructure was through our program partner, CENGN. So CENGN is the Center of Excellence of Next Generation Network, which you can learn from Alex later on about what they do. Mainly, they have this large data center infrastructure available, also for company to access to a lot of testing. For example, like skill up testing, performance testing, these type of testing. So you can access on their cloud to do this type of based on your project needs. So today, John, Dan, and Adam, they will talk more details about why they find they should engage at the programs at the beginnings, and through the projects, what they have learned like works well, or if they have any suggestion or tips for the companies who are interested or who's already kind of new to the programs. Then yeah, so pass back to you, Janice. I'm just sharing my screen as well.
Thanks so much, Farhan. All right, so now we're going to turn to introduce more fully our founders and their companies, and we'll actually invite each of them to introduce themselves. And so we're going to start with Adam from Wavve Boating. Adam, if you could please tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, what is your technology, and who are your customers in 3 minutes or less.
Okay, I'll do my best. Hi, everyone. Good morning. As mentioned, my name is Adam Allore. I'm the founder and CEO of Wavve Boating. Prior to this, I was an engineering grad from Queen's University, worked as an engineer for about a decade, and then started this company, which is Wavve Boating. So what do we do? Wavve Boating is an easy-to-use marine navigation app for the recreational boating industry. So our primary focus is taking nautical chart data, making that easy to read for new boaters in the industry. This is a problem that I saw as a previous boater. And on top of that, we provide a community layer for people to share information. So if anyone has used, say, like Waze for driving their car, it's very much like Waze on the water. A bit about the company, started about 3.5 years ago. It was really just an idea in my head, started hacking some things together, started pretending I had an app, selling it to people. There was a lot of interest, and then I was like, okay, need to build something here. So started as a team of 1, we're now up to a team of 8, and the product itself has expanded from something that was first for the St. Lawrence River, which is kind of a body of water that I was personally boating on, to now expanded to both Canada and the United States. And It's getting a lot of notice. So as of this past fall, we actually took our software and integrated it onto the 2021 CEDU by Bombardier Recreational Products. So we created the first sort of what I've coined as boat play, but it's like CarPlay or Android Auto. If you use that for your car, this is the first taking of that technology into the marine space. So we're part of that with Bombardier, which was a ton of fun and very exciting. And we're now expanding our very consumer-focused product and seeing value with it, with actually different boating organizations, different boating clubs, rentals, marinas, and providing more offering for them. So that's a quick summary there.
Well done, Adam. Thank you so much. And so exciting to hear about your growth over the past 3.5 years and how you approached entry into the market. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now over to John. John, if you could please give us an introduction to yourself and JIC Design and your company, technology, and customers. You're on mute, John.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is John Garofalo. I'm owner of JIC Design Inc. We have a platform called Prism. It's not as interesting as Adam's Boating, but Prism supports cross-institution registrations for school boards and colleges. So to kind of break it down, nowadays at high school, students are allowed to take courses in other school boards. So within the infrastructure at each school board, everything's locked for privacy and security to maintain data within its own borders. So we've created a system that will become a centralized registration system, and we house the data securely and allow for students to take courses they need for post-secondary education that's required, and hopefully help them meet their needs and their goals. We did work with 25 school boards in Ontario prior to our introduction to CENGN, and we've grown to 40 boards now. We work with 2 colleges here in Ontario as well. It's a similar system where colleges and school boards work together for dual credits. Again, it's 2 institutions that require a secure environment, so we offer them that system. We've been working on it for quite a number of years now, and finally it's starting to get some notice as well. We demoed for the ministry because they've pushed some mandate about required e-learning across the province. So we're hoping that an RFP will come out this year for that, and maybe we will be eligible to get into that. And that's about it.
Thank you, John, and congratulations on your expansion to 40 boards. That's wonderful news. And now over to Dan Desjardins, who is the CEO of King's Distributed Systems. Dan, give us your pitch.
Thanks, Janice. First of all, just a quick comment to Adam and John. That's pretty cool. I didn't know you guys were here in Kingston. I'd like to link up later and maybe even physically link up our boats, Adam. Always looking for where the cool people are and what bay or nook there at Thousand Islands. Yeah, name's Dan. I'm a CEO of King's Distributed Systems and Executive Director of Distributed Compute Labs, a nonprofit educational arm of King's. Named almost like something you'd read off the side of a truck. We went deliberately boring so that because we're trying to be very stoic in the deep tech that we're building here in Kingston. Personally, I did my PhD at Queen's in computational electromagnetics. Served 17 years in the Canadian Air Force. I flew C-130 Hercules aircraft for search and rescue, and you can tell I'm enjoying the post-mortem career with the longer hair here. It's the first time since I was 16 where I get to grow it out. So I'm very much, I guess, user zero of the tech we're building. So being a computational guy needing a lot of computational power, the platform we've built, we're calling the Distributed Compute Protocol, or DCP for short. That sounds like TCP/IP for a reason. Essentially allows people to harness all existing devices, CPU, GPU, FPGA resources. It's an idea that's as old as the 1960s with SETI at home and what have you, but built the only one in the world now built completely on web technology. And every device speaks web, which means we can tap into every device, which is not the same case for all other competitive solutions. And why are we doing this? Is we're making compute for predictive analytics, AI, machine learning, and just about anything you can do with computers 7 to 35 times cheaper than Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft, and everything else. We're now a team of 24 and growing to about 30 this summer.
Wow.
Raised about 4 million US and almost spent it all. We're nearing closing, I guess, a large seed round of about 6 million US. We're expecting to close that within the next 8 weeks. We have commitment now, but nothing is true until it's in the bank. And probably more importantly, why all this was enabled, or a large part of it was because of our work with CENGN, ENCQOR 5G, and Queen's Partnerships and Innovation. So I'd be remiss if I didn't end and conclude that introduction with a big thank you to the community that has pushed hard to get us where we are today. And I think I can say honestly that we wouldn't be here without each of those programs and participation and the lift we got from them. And Fayran, special thanks for you for roping me into CENGN in the first place. I was hard to get, and I'll explain that later.
Pleasure is all on us, Dan.
And thank you so much, Dan, and such a pleasure to work with you and provide support to you and your company. And wow, I can't wait to catch up with more details on everything that's been happening in the last few months. Okay, so now we're ready to start our actual panel discussion. And we haven't really mapped this out. We've got questions mapped out for our panelists, but we haven't mapped out who's going to speak in what order. So I would encourage each of you, when Fayran or I pose a question, you know, whoever wants to go first, you can, and then we'll see if one of the other partners wants to respond to the same question, and then we'll continue on. So the first question I have the pleasure of asking, and it is quite simple. How has COVID impacted your company, your team, your business? Of course, that's a very real situation that everybody's struggling with today, or many businesses are struggling with, but many businesses are excelling in this COVID environment. So please share with us, just as a starting point, how COVID has impacted you and your business and team. Who would like to start?
I'm happy to start.
Adam, thank you.
Yeah, sure. I can kind of start on a positive note in that regard. I would say we're really fortunate in terms of what happened to our industry as a result of the pandemic. What happened in the recreational boating was really the biggest boom that it's seen in the past 15 years.
Wow.
So the average age of boater dropped by 10 years, which is again skewing towards the demographic towards our product. A lot more people were investing that money that they would have perhaps spent on a trip. They were spending it on their sort of toys that they could enjoy, you know, time with their family around. So there was a very positive trend in the industry. As a result, we were, you know, a very fortunate business to, one, be able to work fully remote. So our team, everyone could work remotely. And we were able to grow our consumer base at 2 to 3 times our size over 2020, which did allow us to bring more people onto our team who were coming from industries who actually were not as fortunate. So, you know, one of our sales and business development director was coming from the hotel industry, who, you know, had to be laid off you know, for obvious reasons in that space. So I was happy that we could take people who were getting displaced in other industries and bring it into ours. So again, feel very fortunate. I know it was very rough for a lot of different businesses in different industries. So that was the result for us.
Thank you, Adam. Dan or John, would you like to share your reflections on that question? Dan?
Yeah, I was actually very nervous because whenever these crises hit, regardless of the source, it creates, I'm going to borrow terms from Garibaldi, equity, whatever firm, they referred to the investors as the scared baby phase. When this hits, everyone essentially pulls back their funding and they just reinvest in existing companies to keep them afloat, and they don't invest in new companies, causing those new companies to start a starvation phase. Worse yet, then you see after the scared baby phase, you see the hungry fox phase, where you have some hungry foxes come out and try and get really good deals and deep discounts on existing companies and take advantage. And so that's what COVID did. It created this stretch of time where everyone had to look around and be like, okay, who's going to be left standing at the end of this? And we are very squarely fit in that definition of a company that is on the move, but not in any secure, hasn't hit past the secure gate. Like we're gonna be flying gate. And with the IP we're building, potentially high value, we had everything to lose. A little bit of luck, I think. Our existing investors were going to help us weather, but up to a point. Our burn rate was beyond the point that they could single-handedly take us through. So we literally had to find something to get us through. And that's where we applied for and won a COVID-19 specific predictive analytics project with Digital Technology Supercluster, which we partnered with on Queens and other Kingston companies to sort of create a little moat where it kept us in Limestone Analytics and other Kingston companies. So that funding literally allowed us to limp through COVID-19 through that period. And that's, so we're very fortunate to have gotten that. And now that we're exiting on the other side of this dark period, we've seen a transition away from the scared baby and the hungry fox. Now investors are starting to reawaken and now start competing. There's pent-up demand. So, you know, we're glad to be left standing because now there's actually a renewed, and in fact, valuations are a little bit higher than they should be. So it's good timing to be in the market, building a company and doing stuff. And again, if you prove out your technology on CENGN and OCI and ENCQOR 5G, these are the types of milestones and endorsement that will help drive the people, the investors, to come to the table with you.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for sharing those very visual analogies of the type of people who were circling. Interesting to hear that perspective. John, would you like to share anything from a JIC design perspective?
Yeah, I think I had similar experience to Adam, but without the consumer base. I mean, one of the pivots we were able to make is to focus on remote learning. And with COVID brought remote learning, and boards were looking for solutions. Boards were also looking to, again, try to share students so that everyone can get access. You know, there was octomesters, there's quadmesters, there's a whole bunch of different systems and semester structures that are out there now. So we were able to support them all and also give a lot of, well, like 15 new boards access to what we can provide them, and they were more than interested. We worked actually one-on-one with Waterloo Regional School Board. They wanted to create a further integration, so it's an automated system that goes right into their student information system. They would be able to register their students. There was 10 to 15,000 students being registered for a semester, and they were just looking for, how are we doing this without the minimum number of errors? Because once it's going across systems and there's any kind of error within data management, it's a disaster. So they had initially for the first semester, they had, I think, like 10 or 15 people full time for like 2 weeks, just trying to do some registrations. And then they said, John, like, how can Prism help us? So we worked and made it so much easier for them. And then some more Catholic boards across the province kind of fell in line, and we were able to actually help them. So, we feel happy about that while growing the business as well. So it definitely assisted in growing support for Prism, as well as the notoriety of it.
Thank you. Firan, over to you.
Yes. Well, firstly, thank you, Adam, Dan, and John, for telling us about your story. COVID, it is a tough time, but I think if we work together, we can leverage the resource for each other, and then we will get through this together. Yeah. So my next question is actually related to 5G. So people has been talking about this 5G buzzword for quite a long time. So could you give us some idea about your technology solution roadmap? What has been, or what will be the impact for your technology for the development or your customers? So maybe I will start with Dan.
Okay, sure. Yeah, thanks. So in edge computing or distributed edge computing, which is, I guess, our bailiwick, we're moving around a lot of data, and data has mass in a sense. It's hard to move around, to slingshot back and forth on wires and waves and all over the place. So the arrival of 5G and then 6G and 7G and eventually 36.5G means that we can slingshot more and more data around back and forth. And this is important because right now, if you have, if you're just communicating between devices, computers and servers with a 1 GB per second connection, you're very limited in the size of machine learning, AI, natural language processing, high volume trading, like all that kind of stuff. You hit an upper limit to how fast you can slingshot data back and forth for analysis. This is really important across every sector, from smart agriculture, where you'll have data sensors like all over the place, collecting humidity and temperature and video feeds and what have you, taking all that data, sending it to some potentially centralized or decentralized repository, and then farming it from there to CPUs, GPUs, and FPGAs to analyze, work on, and feed metrics back to the user. Well, that doesn't happen by magic. There's a lot of networking under the hood that makes those things happen. And as we're seeing 10 and 100 times proliferation of these sensors that are collecting and generating all this data, well, guess what? If the networking infrastructure doesn't keep up to move all that data around for processing, it's going to be completely useless. So what we've been doing with CENGN is we've been able to scale up the sheer number of computing nodes that are talking to the scheduler and receiving data moving back and forth. So we've been able to see at scale, where do things break? What we're about to begin, accepted and about to begin with ENCQOR 5G is now we're able to see, well, now if we scale the network volume, so not the number of pipes, but the size of those pipes, what happens and how does it enhance or break? Where do things break at that point? So we've been fortunate, we're one of the fortunate companies, I don't know how often this happens, but to benefit from both, but they've both offered incredible complementary benchmarking for this. So what does 5G do? 5G is what's going to save us from our self-imploding hunger for increased sensors and data analytics and everything else. So 5G is absolutely freaking critical to society and everything else, and to our platform. It's going to show, it's not just going to show, it's absolutely physically required in order to support all of these deep tap applications across smart energy, smart homes, smart cities, smart vehicles, where there's just an exponential amount of data that has to be processed and moved around.
Thank you so much, Dan. I think your vision about beyond 5G, this is very interesting. So maybe we can connect offline, because that will also help OCI to think about strategically after 5G, what type of new kind of 6G or 7G program we can start to plan for the next few years, and we can push the provincial government to think about that as well and to support a company in the province. Awesome. So now I'm open to Adam. So how about wave voting? What kind of help, or you feel like 5G has been benefit to your technology solution, or what's your vision for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very exciting for us, because really what kind of got the product off the ground was taking large sets of nautical data and parsing it down to its most minimalist format so that we could serve that to our customers on a very smooth map experience. And that's what differentiated us quickly from our competitors, was just that map style experience. And that was 3 years ago, when we're dealing with customers, especially on the water, they're dealing with 3G or lower speeds. So what 5G is going to allow us to do is really expand that experience that we can provide to our customers. Now we can add more media content. We're looking at doing some augmented reality solutions. Very much the marine industry kind of follows behind the automotive industry, probably about a 5-year lag. So seeing what's happening in automotive with AR is really, I think, going to be a good fit for us in the marine industry. And 5G ultimately really helps make that possible for us. One thing that I'm particularly excited about is also the increased coverage with low band 5G. That is a concern with our customers all the time. You know, am I going to have a connection? I'm seeing a phase out of consumer concern about its unlimited plans, but I think 5G is going to just be where it's no longer this sort of concern of how many megabytes is that video that I'm downloading or uploading. That's just going to be eliminated. So that's going to be one less stressor for our consumer base, which is particularly exciting. And then I think just seeing where 5G is getting adopted and where we want to take our product, there's a lot of meshing there. So in particular, right now, we offer our service both Canada and the United States, but Europe is on the horizon, probably in a more of a 2022 play. And that looks like to be one of the third largest markets in adoption of 5G. So I think it helps kind of play into our long-term expansion plan. So similar to Dan, I think very much in terms of, you know, it's really coming down to the data transfer for us, the doors that can open for us. And ultimately that's going to result, I think, for us to provide a better customer experience. And that's really what we're looking to investigate further as we go through our project.
Thank you so much, Adam. I think you also brought a good point about these international market expansion, because this is very important for any of Canadian company. We always encourage them thinking about globally. Although we're currently a bit behind on the 5G side, but moving forward, in order for a company to get into more like Asian market or European market, we will get there together to help you guys to be comfortable for 5G network. Yeah, so now move to John. I know, John, your project has been more on the CENGN next generation network side, but maybe from your angle, especially your experience, expertise in the education sector, is there any specific insights you can talk about related to the 5G as well?
Are you wanting me to touch on CENGN or just 5G?
Oh, up to you. So if you have any insights you feel like from your experience in the education sector, you can also talk about 5G as well. Feel free to do so. But if you feel like you wish to wait a little bit later for more talking about CENGN side, we can also just pass and then moving to the next question.
John, I would suggest we just go to the next question and we'll start with you, which is about CENGN. So starting with John, why were you interested in applying to either the ENCQOR 5G or the NGNP CENGN initiative?
Yeah, to touch on it a little bit. Yeah, the 5G, I didn't feel was a need for our platform. I'm sure there is a need within whether it's institution infrastructure that could benefit from 5G. But you have pretty stable internet connections. Some rural schools or boards might benefit from the 5G. But from our system, yeah, the CENGN program was very appealing. Like we had, I think there's about a quarter of the English school boards in Ontario as part of our customer base. And we were looking to grow provincially and also out of province and as well out of country. So we could tell, we had a system that's reliable. It was pretty stable. We have like Ottawa school boards, one in Toronto, but Toronto does have 3 other ones that would amass a pretty high usage of the system. So we weren't sure that we have the system that could support the province without any evidence. So it was great timing when I think I saw Ferran and Alex do a workshop at the OPI office there. And that's where it really got me thinking like, okay, we do need to go through this program and we need to test our scalability because, you know, we've already been in contacts with the ministry once before. Let's have this, you know, in our pocket so we know we can actually support the province. Because Ontario is the biggest province as it is. So, you know, our system would be fine across the country, but let's make sure that we can handle Ontario. So that was our main goal coming into the program. And once we started speaking with Ferran, we were introduced to another aspect of the program, which was Talent Edge. So I'll touch base quickly on that, but basically it allowed us to have partially subsidized interns. So within that, we got lucky and we have 2 of them. They're still on board, and it's been a godsend for us. So with respect to helping perform all the tasks required for the CENGN scaling, as well as adding new features for our current clients, they're definitely getting training plus, and it's definitely helping save the bottom line for our company. And even across COVID, you know, our rates were the same. You know, we grew up with some boards, but it wasn't a huge financial revenue increase. So it was definitely great having these resources that could help us hopefully get past it into the next year and to be able to keep them for the long term.
Thank you, John. Adam, I know you have not participated. Oh no, did you participate in the NGN program as well as the 5G?
Just the 5G.
Just the 5G, right, okay. And so I know Dan participated in both, but Adam, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience about why you were interested in applying, or do you feel you've covered all of that in your previous comments?
I would just add from what kind of attracted me to a lot, or to it rather, is sort of recognizing where we are in the competitive landscape. So our biggest competitor is owned by Garmin. So massive company, they have really strong market penetration. And we're in a slightly fortunate position right now where they're still very focused on a hardware-based solution. And it's my opinion that it's only a matter of time until they realize they need to focus on a more software-based solution. So as a company, starting here in Kingston, small team competing against, you know, it's David and Goliath situation. I recognize it's absolutely a race against time right now. They're going to have the more resources than frankly we'll ever have. So seeing this program with 5G, this opportunity to advance our technical infrastructure to continue to get a leg up on our software side just seemed like a greater opportunity for us as a company to try and get that lead in that race that I know is going to really kick off here in the next few years for us. So that's what excited me about the program. Similar to John, we recently took advantage of Talent Edge as well, and very, very positive results. That got one of our best engineers has joined our team through that, and very thankful for that as well.
Fabulous, thanks, Adam. And Dan, would you like to build on your comments that you've made about what attracted you to each of the programs? You've spoken a lot about 5G or the ENCQOR program, but are there additional comments you would like to make about either ENCQOR 5G or the CENGN programs and what drew you to them, besides fear in pulling you to them?
Yeah, this might be useful actually for the entrepreneurs in the room who are considering it. I actually didn't want to originally. I met Ferran at a conference in Ottawa, I forget, and over time we maintained discussions, and she really kept pushing, you know, you should apply. And the reason I was initially not I wasn't enticed is because everything, as you know, as entrepreneurs comes at a cost, right? Filling out the application is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the work that's going to be required when you decide you're going after something. There's reporting, and now you're physically allocating those resources to make this thing happen, and maybe it's distracting you from a quicker path to a product, and so on and so forth. As we all know, to use an overused analogy, entrepreneurs are literally falling off a cliff and trying to build a plane and pull up at the, before they hit the ground. And you're constantly evaluating trade-offs. Maybe all the time I'm about to spend trying to get into this program that will do a $50,000 cost reimbursement on $100,000 expenditure, and all the work and resources and hours and reporting that goes into that. Maybe it's better spent just going and getting another investor for $100,000 and then being able to use that as pure working capital and not have to fill out, blah, 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 blah. So my thinking was it was on the zeroth order. It was all about resources, potential distraction, and return on investment, essentially, from the entrepreneur's point of view. But what came with it that was much more important was the community building and the signaling and the networking and everything else. In fact, being accepted into the ENCQOR 5G, CENGN, and OCI programs were tremendous signals to our investors as saying, well, we've not heard of them before, but it sounds good. It sounds official. Because we're mostly US backed. Canadians are a different story. And so in terms of signaling, it's excellent. And then when I rewind and look at the whole thing in retrospect, the act of writing the proposals and making them adequate to be competitive and get in, the need to be able to articulate what are your objectives, what are you trying to prove, what are the success metrics, who's your customer, how is this going to get you closer to them. If you can't articulate that in the first place, you're doing something wrong anyway. So the whole exercise of getting out to CENGN, even and ENCQOR 5G and OCI, even though it could potentially be viewed as a distraction in terms of an hours thing, it's one hell of a good dress rehearsal to align your own self with, are you as an entrepreneur actually rowing your boat in a direction that's lined up for success? And if you are, then the application should be a piece of cake in the first place. So it's one of those self-confirming activities. But the benefit is once you're in that community, you have the investor signaling, and there's all kinds of compounding opportunities behind that. I'd like to say that Alex has been extremely generous with us over at CENGN. We're now actually on a second phase that is longer than the traditional show up, test your stuff, and get out, because we have more people. We're actually doing an elongated phase right now because this edge compute technology can actually facilitate more people testing more compute projects streamlined onto platforms like on-prem compute networks or CENGN or now SOSIP. Because of CENGN's participation, now SOSIP is looking at long-term strategic ways of pipelining compute-heavy data science and AI and ML projects from universities, even as far north that don't have data centers, streamlining access to be able to soak up computing resources and cloud-like resources in more institutions like SOSIP and CENGN and so on and so forth. So to me, this is infinitely more valuable than just the initial test. It's literally building strategic partnerships and getting introductions to the community and everything else. So beyond grateful for Feyron convincing us to take the leap. And so for every entrepreneur here, I guess the bottom line is it's worth it. It's totally worth it.
Thanks, Dan. Back to you, Feyron, for the next question.
Yeah, thank you, Janice. Yeah, thank you, Dan and Adam and John, for your insights. Definitely, when we design this program, it's always direct benefit and indirect side benefits behind the thing. But that's how we kind of trying to figure out which going to be the focus for entrepreneurs, because they're the busiest people. They're running a company 24/7. So yeah, so actually my next question is going to be more, because actually all of you has already mentioned about lots of value you are able to receive from the program. But I think the audience may be interested to know specifically more about these two test beds we've been keeping talking about involved in the program. What exactly you find their value is about, and what's the setup? Maybe it can be a little bit technical, because I know all of you have some technical backgrounds, and then we can maybe get into that a little bit to give the audience a little bit insights about the test bed itself and the capability, testing capability, and the infrastructure setup. So maybe I start with Adam.
Sure, I can start. I probably have the least experience with Dan and John, as we kind of just got our project kicked off. So we haven't actually made to test bed yet, but we're in the process right now of setting that up, how we're going to actually mimic our server style functions on the test bed itself, so we can measure both network speeds and how our server itself is responding in real time. So I would say we're kind of at the infancy newbie stage of going through the project. So I think I'm as interested as the audience to also hear from Dan and John how kind of the project completion, how that stage is gone.
Yeah, sounds good. Good point. So maybe I will start with Dan first, because they actually engaged the test batch for the longest time. Then I will pass to John, because John has more time on especially on the Shenzhen testbed for a while. So maybe, yeah, so Dan, how about your Shenzhen testbed experience? Because you got another project going at the moment, so that's exciting.
So I definitely business savvy, but if you want the technical deep, I will literally run over and get Wes, and he's our database expert, and he literally helped configure baud rates to make sure there's no misalignments in the ports and all this other stuff that's like more than, again, I'm a physicist, not a data engineer. But no, the onboarding to CENGN was relatively smooth. It really helped that our engineers have a lot of industry experience, and the CENGN's engineers have a lot of industry experience. Therefore, the two of them talking together, there was no insurmountable issue. Technically, God, I'm afraid of almost launching into it, because if I start recalling it wrong, Alex is going to jump in and say that was wrong. But everything from their portal and every single effort on the CENGN testbed was geared towards streamlining access towards their resources. From the get-go, when you're writing your proposal, they make it, and you make it very clear what resources with what environments you're going to be using. So is it Ubuntu 18.04? Is it 72 cores or 144? Is it GPU? How much bandwidth? What restrictions? So you literally quantify, almost like going to a grocery market. What it is that you're going to put in your basket. And then once you have that in your basket, they provide all the jump servers and everything else that you need to go in and access those resources. In our case, because we were a little bit closer to the metal and we weren't using off-the-shelf Docker, Kubernetes, whatever all the kids are using nowadays, because we're closer to the metal, it required actually a finer touch between the engineers. So we stumbled into just a few things that were really helpful and cool to co-investigate. Made us learn a bunch, and we hope we were helpful to CENGN at the same time. So maybe backing up a step, you explicitly plan the resources that you're going to have access to in the environments and the hardware and everything else. You explicitly plan the tests you're going to confirm and who's going to be lead on them. And then you carry out those tests, and then you measure all the metrics. In our case, we are very interested in looking at the percentage utilization of all of those resources. Power consumption, we were able to get access with permission to electrical power consumption by CENGN's machines that were running our computations, because we're very interested in calculating what's the marginal cost of compute here. Right? Because Wavve is, if we're allowing people to sell their excess compute capacity, they want to do it at a profit, which means more than the cost of electricity and some. So they were very helpful at providing that sort of non-standard information. Like, I don't know that many consumers care about how much electricity CENGN is consuming, but we do. So they were doing all the standard stuff plus some, and it was very helpful to have that concierge-like helpfulness to go outside the box where required. And then it all culminates in reporting. So all the objectives and key deliverables that you said you were going to test and measure, well, you now have to report them. And then it gets wrapped up in a bow and the project is complete. We're very excited in compounding projects. So that one project we did with CENGN, now we're interested in, because if you guys have seen this, we're more of like a middleware type platform providing compute. Now we have another startup completely unrelated that's running some machine vision applications on our platform on CENGN and on our platform and on ENCQOR 5G. So we've kind of gone in, done the trailblazing to see what breaks first. We've been varying the number of connections and the size of those connections. And now the real test, the applied test is, can we help other companies, again, by slashing their AWS bills, by bringing them onto this platform, onto SOCIP and CENGN and university network campuses and what have you. So that's sort of been our, I don't know if that's helpful. It wasn't very technical, but it sort of summarizes from my vantage point, our helpful interactions with CENGN.
That's very valuable information, Dan. Thank you so much. And maybe like later on, you can also offline connect with Adam too. So maybe he can learn, one side is on your 5G experience, but on the other side, maybe there's something you can do, then Adam's platform can leverage your platform for the future business development. John, moving to your side, how's your current Shenzhen project going?
Yeah, ours is actually almost complete. I think Dan did a pretty good job at breaking everything down with respect to the report. I think it's really important, and I think it's one of the other questions about the application, but it's important to think through the milestones, and kind of like Dan had mentioned, you have your team leads, you have what they're going to do. One of the main things that CENGN provides, and Alex and his team did a great job at replicating our environment. So, like Dan said, we specify what is our production server, what are the specs from a technical standpoint, and they'll mimic it so that you're actually testing your product on your production environment, so that you know the actual failure rate that way, rather than trying to compare it on a similar environment but something's different. So that was one of the key things with respect to the team leads on the different milestones. It's very important because, like Dan had mentioned earlier too, to have those resources taken out of your daily activities, you need to plan for it. It's not just, let this thing run and leave. You do need to actually be on top of it. You need to specify, okay, in our case, what's the system's CPU utilization when there's 500 simultaneous users, if there's 1,000 simultaneous users, if there's 3,000, so that when, you might have a goal in mind, and ours was 3,000 simultaneous users going through Prism and doing student registrations, doing course additions, and doing the normal activities. Within CENGN, in our 4 weeks on the test bed, we could break it down technically and say, okay, for 2 days, we're going to run database reads. For 2 days, we're going to write database writes. And we're going to see if we do 1,000 of each for a day, what's the impact? When does the CPU utilization break? When does the server crash? And one of the great additions that Alex's team member had suggested is, if we can complete this without any issues, why don't we increase the users to 5,000, 10,000, whatever, to see when the system actually breaks, so that we have, a breaking point in our long-term plan to know, okay, if we're bringing on this many number of users, we're going to need infrastructure at this point. So it definitely helped us plan out a roadmap of what is our current infrastructure, and kind of like Dan, we like bare metal as well. So we have our own server. We make sure that that's up to what we need. With our case, there was also there's a lot of reports. There's emails being sent out. So what aspect in our code has problems? Where is there any bugs that might be causing any memory leaks or whatnot? So it was definitely great going through that to find these numbers. And like Dan mentioned, you're able to report this with the CENGN team. You have, I think it's like weekly meetings or a couple a week, depending on how things are going, where you talk about, where you've got to, any issues you have come across, and they're really responsive, really helpful. So I can't say enough about them. We have some internal knowledge on scalability, but we thought, okay, this is an opportunity to take experienced people who's, this is what they do, this is what they offer, so let's work with them and let's make sure we do this properly. So yeah, it was definitely great. It was eye-opening for us, and it helped us long-term, knowing that if these are the bottlenecks or these are issues with current development, for future development, let's avoid these. Let's find the solution now so that we build, you know, something that's not going to cause a problem again in a month, because we can't just use CENGN every other month that we need it whenever we push out a new feature. So it's definitely great for us. And like I think I'd mentioned, shortly after we had a demo with the Ministry of Education here in Ontario, and I was able to pull out that, you know, we just had scalability tests on the CENGN network. Again, some credibility to your product. So that was definitely great. And again, with the talent edge tied to this, it was definitely worth going for.
So, Firan, I am just looking at the clock and knowing what we still have in front of us. So I'm going to consolidate the next couple of questions and ask, we'll start with Dan, but we'll really ask you to reflect upon any tips or suggestions that you can offer to companies that are participating today on determining how these programs could help their company and in preparing a successful application. So what advice can you provide based on your personal experiences at pursuing these programs and engaging with them?
Yep.
And determining if they're right for your company?
Yeah, well, a few things. I'll consolidate some of the points I gave, but I'll mention another one. Timing is everything. Make sure your product is at a point where it makes sense to deploy and test on CENGN and ENCQOR 5G. That point might seem obvious, but it's not, because people will see the $50,000 coupon and be like, oh, I can use this and bootstrap my way up to a product. But that's when it will become a distraction for you. If you don't have, if you're using that to try and build the product to then test everything else, then this will be a distraction. You can't do that two things at once. Make sure you have a very at least a very strong plan. First of all, a very strong commercialization plan. A, because you need one to survive as a company. B, because you need it for the application. But C, make sure your product is at a testable point. Because if it's not there yet and you're trying to plan for it when it's going to be ready and try and time things, you can run into, if it's not ready, you'll slow down, and it could jeopardize the whole testing cycle on CENGN in the first place, or ENCQOR 5G and everything else. So yes, it's really helpful to get access to Talent Edge and the reimbursement grants that are provided, but don't let those blind you as to appropriate timing for when to do it. You do need to have something to test. I'm not saying this because we didn't, but I feel like we did it maybe about 2 months early, and it led to us having to fix a lot more on the fly than we would have wanted, and it made it a little bit more uncomfortable from our perspective. So that would be my advice: is time it and don't get distracted by the financial incentives.
Yes, actually, if I may build on, that's always our OCI suggestion for the entrepreneurs. These financial support on the funding side definitely is good to go for it, because it can offload your financial kind of risk a little bit, but that's not the key point. If you're just trying to apply for that a few $1,000 or $100 of the grants program, then don't apply for these programs, because the more value is more about these test beds, because those are kind of the real things that can help you for your technology roadmap development moving forward. That's the most important thing. And plus, these funding are always limited. Once it's gone, it's gone. But these task beds will be there. So if you see a fit, just feel free to let us know. We will figure out a way to help you guys to get involved.
Thanks, Farron. Adam, would you like to offer tips based on your experiences to date?
Yeah, I think I would partially reiterate what Dan was saying is just making sure the program aligns with your company goal and roadmap first. I personally have experience of doing that incorrectly in our infancy years, and totally got burned by that distraction concept that Dan was talking about. So I think first evaluating, does it align with your company goal? In terms of the application process itself, I find there's quite a bit of well documentation online to at least get a general idea of what programs and how it might align with your goals. And personally, I think having a chat with Firan, with Alex, I found that extremely helpful before I put pen to paper on anything. Totally to your guys' credit, you were very generous with your time to run through, and I could say, hey, this is one thing, does this fit, does this not fit? And before you really embark down that road and invest that time into the application, having that conversation was extremely valuable, probably saved me a ton of time. And that was a big takeaway for me.
Thank you, Adam. John, do you have additional comments you'd like to share, tips?
Yeah, I'll try not to just repeat Dan and Adam, but they both had great insights, and that's mainly what I would try to push towards. And similarly, I would say just make sure you have the allocated resources. And like when I applied, I didn't even know there was money. When Ferran and Alex, they just said, this is what we offer. I was like, okay, I'm in. As long as I get engineers to help me, that's awesome. And then Ferran slipped in, oh, there's 50K, if he's for 100K. So that was definitely an added benefit. So for us, we have a client, we want to grow. This is your opportunity to actually test it, to know, okay, this can handle more than one client. It's not going to break, what are my needs? But with respect to your team, make sure you have the resources that you can allocate. That's why you think through the milestones, think through team leads, or else, you're going to be in a situation where it's a problem, like Dan's mentioned, where your team is trying to do work as well as CENGN, and they can't do both at the same time. Especially with CENGN testbed, you have limited time there because they have multiple companies going through. You have to use that time wisely. You have to focus on it. Things won't work all the time, so you need to spend the time to fix it on the CENGN testbed. We had our simultaneous users crash the system over and over again because there's just so much running, and we needed to find solutions. So you need to just be prepared to have the resources to spend on it, whether it's, bringing someone in to help or, speak with Alex and Ferran, and they'll definitely give you guidance on that.
Thanks, John. So Firan, I think we should move to our final questions.
Yes.
Maybe you could ask number 6 and I'll ask number 7.
Sounds good, Janice. I have my last question here because this is more a vision question. It will help agency like OCI to think about what's the new program we should think about in the future to offer to entrepreneur that really valuable to their business development. So my question is, what do you really see on your in your specific sector or on the general level, like the technology landscape in the next 3 to 5 years, maybe? So it will help us to have a vision strategically moving forward to design new programs in the near future. So maybe I start with Dan?
Sure. Well, we're seeing, obviously I'm a little biased here, but we're seeing a lot of edge applications and edge sensors and data analytics moving increasingly to the edge. And what I mean by that is that the days of backhauling a bunch of data from all places, I'll use an applied example. If you're doing medical ultrasound imaging in a jungle or in a northern community in Canada, backhauling all of the MRI or ultrasound imagery to some central data lake somewhere, in Toronto is no longer going to be feasible. A lot of this compute and data processing is going to happen on computers nearer to the service, nearer to the data. And these will be done on software platforms. So there's an explosion in PaaS and SaaS-like products, and they're all going to be geared around analyzing data. It's no surprise. ISED is completely aligning the country on data economies and future of workforces being all digital backed. And we're if we thought that Uber, Airbnb, or whatnot were the only titans, think again. Everybody is building platform everything, and it's all to do with membership and suites of applications on these platforms, and mostly going to be around data analytics and providing those services. Smart supply chains. All this, when you look at all the superclusters, all the projects that they're funding, that gives you immediate insight into where the big technology trends are going. And it's all to do with AI automation, predictive analytics, and data fusion and integration, ingestion. And the more of this can be done at the edge, so in the factories themselves, the more resilient this mesh of enterprise becomes, because if you lose a data center, you don't want to lose your entire manufacturing backbone. So that's where we see this going. And I think that Encore 5G, specifically with the 5G readiness for that type of, again, slinging around data for these data analytics applications, regardless of the application, completely irrespective of the application itself, but just as an infrastructure as a service position in the first place is absolutely essential, and that needs to get ramped up yesterday. CENGN is more aligned with the traditional type of mass centralized application running, but when I say legacy, I don't want to make it sound like it's a thing of the past, because it's going to continue to stay extraordinarily strong. It's just we're seeing the new kid on the block, which is decentralized edge. So both need to coexist, and maybe actually there's a nice pipeline there where you can get legacy companies or startups deploying and testing their technology in CENGN and then feeding into an Encore 5G type facelift, so that they can go from a legacy approach to a modern, more distributed approach. Those are just my 2 cents worth. Of course, they're very biased, but just throwing it on the table.
We can talk offline about beyond 5G later on.
Yes.
Yeah, pass to you, Adam.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting hearing what Dan and John are doing, because I think you guys are really kind of on the cutting edge. With us, particularly in the marine industry, I do have the advantage of, it's kind of like having a bit of a looking glass into the future when we look at see what's happening in the automotive industry. So the marine industry has always sort of lagged behind. So for us specifically, again, really seeing what's happening in automotive. So automation, augmented reality, that's really where I see a lot of opportunity for us. And both of those functionalities really tie in well with what we're trying to do with the 5G project. So kind of short and sweet, but that's sort of where I'm seeing us proceeding moving forward from here.
That's great. Thank you so much, Adam. John?
Yeah, I think with respect to education, I mean, there's a heavy focus on security. I don't know at this point, with the way everything's going and technology they're using and adopting, I should say, they're staying stable within kind of like the CENGN, like Dan had mentioned, the legacy system, because of security, because of privacy. I don't know if they'll ever go to whether it's a 5D distribute computing, and they'd be okay with the fact that data is being transferred somewhere else. For whatever reason. I mean, there is definitely security protocols, whether it's blockchain or whatever comes down the pipe. So that might open up, but at this point, it seems it's staying with stable and secure, and most of the infrastructure is locked in within a facility rather than even a hosting facility in another country or province. It needs to be in this board, in this room, and that's where the data's staying. They're slowly adopting like Prism with its cloud-based system, so they are able to, as long as it's within Canada, within our borders, doesn't leave, and follows specific protocols. So I don't know if they'll ever move from that. So I mean, CENGN, that focus, where I would say education would stay for the near future, but it would be nice for it to expand and to offer some insights into some new technologies.
Wrote down on my notes.
So thank you. We're going to move to our final question, but before we do, I did want to mention to each of you and to Firan that I was contacted recently by a group in the federal government that's, I think, a subset of CSE. And so they have this center called the Canadian Center for Cybersecurity, or something along those lines. It's 3 C's and an S somewhere. And they're creating a sandbox, and they're launching a pilot program in April. And that sandbox is going to be all about hacking. And so companies will be able to bring their technologies to this new test bed or sandbox and see whether or not people can hack in to what they've created. And so, John, for you, it might be something of high interest, given what your area of focus is, and possibly for Dan and Adam as well. So I can share that information separately. We've just recently learned about it, and it's very new. So moving to our final question. In your opening comments, you did reflect on how did your company start? And you also reflected on the fact that you are operating your company using a variety of methods, or building your company using a variety of methods, bootstrapping, raising capital, and or building strategic partnerships. And so as you look to the future growth of your company, can you share with us what your key strategies are for building your company from here forward? Who would like to start?
I'd love to jump in then. We've, like many startups, or at least many new startups, we've taken a spray and pray approach, where where you're literally playing 5-dimensional chess, trying to time and trade off all these different activities, from promotional materials and publicity stunts to building the product to taking on the initial clients. If you take on an initial client and you're making an application for them, those resources building that application are not building the core platform, and vice versa. If you're building the platform, you're not taking on the client application to then go and show that to investors, say, look, clients are using this. And it's so you're constantly moving things around in the 50 million different boxes in order to, at the end of the day, gain clarity on the direction you want to take in the first place. I've been very vague today talking about edge computing and not talking about specific customers. That's because it serves almost everyone. But at the end of the day, if you ask Dan, who are the 4 customers you're going to go after and why? I can only answer that as of 2 months ago. I mean, we're already 4 years in. That's how deep tech and sort of blurry this whole roadmap can be. So do your discovery as fast as possible and refine and prune your plan so that you, even though your target market can be X, make sure you have a very clearly defined subset Y that you're going to tackle, and why, right down to the name, how much it's going to cost you to do, what's the upside potential, and then where do you scale it from there. So those are our big takeaways, I guess, is through this journey. Is it's fine to dabble and do what's called the drunken walk in the startup context, but the sooner you can get to clear articulation of roadmaps on technical and customer, is customer development, I'd say, is as hard, if not twice as hard, as product development. So get that clarity as soon as possible. The sooner you can be clear about it, ironically, that's what's going to get your investors in sooner, is when you can say, I'm going to do this, it's going to get that, and then we're going to do this. Not this, oh yeah, this is the size of the market, and as long as you get 1% of it, we're good. that doesn't work. So yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Adam or John, would you like to make any summary comments about the future for your company and your strategies?
Sure, happy to. Yeah, one thing that we've sort of always done, or had the mentality, and especially being a consumer face, we do have this advantage, which is always to get in front of our customers as quickly as possible. That's been sort of mentality. I highlighted it kind of at the start of the talk, where I was selling an app, which was a hack together website before there was an app. And so we've sort of taken that mentality with different parts in the industry, getting something out as quickly as possible. Being the consumer space, people can be brutally honest, and you just got to look at it in a positive mindset, and recognizing that you're building something bigger, and that's just helping feed your product iteration and development. For our particular growth moving forward, we're pivoting a little bit, still going to continue to offer a consumer-based product, but we're now tying our company with other parts in the recreational boating space that are growing. And it's where our business-to-business play is sort of coming into effect. So in part, I mentioned the integration with Bombardier recreational products. Well, personal watercraft are one of the fastest growing vessel types in the industry. also a very popular, it's not new, but has really exploded methodology for people to get on the water is instead of actually owning a vessel, they pay into a club and they take the club's vessels out. So we've partnered with several clubs in the United States, gave the app to their members, and we've been able to measure, increased customer satisfaction, reduced asset damages, likelihood of referral to friends, and renewals. So this is becoming a bit of a new strategy for us where we're going to partner with these clubs, provide our app service, they're paying for that and growing that way. And one of the bigger advantages for us is it's a cheaper way to get market penetration versus a more traditional consumer route where maybe if we were in the Silicon Valley, I could go get a $5 million marketing budget and push it that way, but that's not the reality that we're in. So trying a different B2B strategy while continuing to have our consumer focus is one of the big strategies for us moving out for 2021.
Thank you. And John.
Yeah,
Not final words, but your plans for JIC looking forward.
Yeah, I think we're trying to get the province of Ontario over the next year. I think that's the big growth. They've already mandated an increased e-learning requirement. We're ready to support it. So that's kind of a short term. Let's hopefully try to get there. But then it's, again, going back to expanding across provinces. We've had discussions with ministries and whatnot, but I feel like, being in Ontario, until we have Ontario, we don't have the push. So we're hoping, that's the next step, as well as we've reached out to some other countries like New Zealand. They were interested in our platform, and as well as some places in the USA. So that's kind of where we'll be gearing towards. Short term, again, focusing on Ontario and then going beyond. One thing I totally forgot and I should include is being part of CENGN gave us access to Invest Ottawa. So, it's been great with OPI at Queen's. They've been helpful. Launch Lab as well. I think Garrett was on the call. They've been instrumental in guiding us as a business as well as through the process, but also having extra resources at Invest Ottawa that we didn't have before because we're part of Kingston's OPI. That's definitely been a benefit for us.
That's great. We'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that experience, John. That's terrific. So that concludes our panel portion of today's agenda. And thank you so much, Adam, Dan, and John, for sharing your stories about your companies, the COVID experience, your opportunity to leverage these programs through OCI, CENGN, and ENCQOR 5G, and what your outlook is for the future. You've provided the audience, I think, with some great practical perspectives that will hopefully help them to see the opportunities that these programs might offer. Before we turn to CENGN and ENCQOR and ask them to provide us with a very brief overview of their programs, I would just like to see if there are any pressing questions from the audience, because I'm worried we're going to run out of time for questions. So I don't see anything in the chat box, but does anybody have a pressing question before we invite CENGN and ENCQOR 5G to give us with probably the remaining 10 minutes today of overview? So if anybody wanted to just raise their hand. I'm not seeing anything. So it's sounding like.
I saw one hand is up.
Oh, did you see a hand?
Yes, I think it's, sorry if I pronounce your name not correct, Sunder?
Yeah, Sundar.
Sunder.
Awesome.
Thank you for your time. Thank you to the speakers as well. I think we all met at one point. I think John, we worked together. I had a specific question for Dan. I saw Dan work together with U of T Hacks with TELUS, and he had like a lot of great other partnerships that I saw, like distributed computers, working with a lot of large companies. I was just wondering what if you had any advice of how startups can work with TELUS or other big companies as well, or if those are network connections that OCI created, or OCE, sorry. Oh, sorry, now OCI.
Well, we're not losing Dan, because I saw he was.
I think he's frozen, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But hopefully you heard me, but I'm not too sure. Maybe we could just wait till he comes, or I'm not too sure, move on. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks, Sundar, and I'm sure Dan will respond at least through email following this. We can connect the two of you. So Firan, would you like to introduce our CENGN and ENCQOR partners for our remaining 10 minutes?
Yes, thank you so much, Janice. So this is our pleasure to bring the program and also the key contact for you today. So I have Alex, who's the engineer from the CENGN site, and I also have Hassan from Sienna, who's looking after the ENCQOR program. Maybe I start from Alex for a quick pop-up, so you know who is Alex. You can put a name and face together.
Sure, thank you, Firan. Good morning. I mean, first of all, I just want to thank Firan, Janice, and Amanda for organizing this event, and the speakers from Kings and JIC and Wavve for taking their time out today. So, I mean, CENGN, we are a not-for-profit company. We support tech innovation and industry growth across the country, so from Victoria to St. John's. But here in Ontario, we are very lucky to have a partnership with Ontario Centre for Innovation, and particularly Firan and Chris Ritchie in Eastern Ontario to help deliver our services. We operate a set of advanced data centers and IoT infrastructure that really act as validation and a test bed for innovative Canadian startups and small businesses, you know, providing a commercial grade cloud platform and engineering expertise unavailable elsewhere. Specifically on the IoT front, I wanted to mention we operate in partnership with Norcat in Sudbury, access to a working operating mine, providing an underground mine and data infrastructure to support all manner of underground mining innovation. I'd love to talk to anybody about that. And soon to be announced is a partnership with DC Farms in Ontario to provide networked access to a commercial greenhouse, enabling live world testing of the latest in smart agricultural technology. And I should point out, Dan made a great point about edge computing. Both of these IoT test beds in the mine and the greenhouse have edge compute capability, and as well our multi-site data centers spread around Ontario are all configured and are able to mimic edge computing capability and enable our clients to learn about and optimize the performance of their platforms in a distributed computing model. So we definitely are thinking about those things. Beyond this, we work with our members and partners such as Cisco, Nokia, Bell, and TELUS to help act as a catalyst for industry growth and provide informed opinion on CENGN, industry and government direction, as well as needs for the future. Our CENGN Academy is providing much needed training in some of the latest networking and programming techniques to new graduates and industry veterans alike. Our commercial services arm is supporting Canadian government and industry directly with consulting and engineering services. But more specifically to all those of you from smaller companies and startups here today, we have completed more than 100 commercialization projects with Canadian leaders such as Kings Distributed. I mean, and as we speak and heard about, working on COVID-related projects, moving forward their platforms. And with JIC Design bringing advanced kind of administrative tools to Canadian school boards. And I've certainly talked with Adam in the past and would love to get Adam on the CENGN platform as well. Anyways, it's been a pleasure this morning to kind of listen in and hear from these folks. And I would welcome any follow-on discussion or questions. And I'm sure Firan has all my contact information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's also our OCI pleasure to be partnered with CENGN on this program. So now moving to Hassan on ENCQOR side.
Thank you, Firan. If I can share my screen, maybe I can show in a couple minutes, a couple of slides, just can summarize.
Yeah, sure, Hassan, go ahead, very quick.
Yeah. So, can you see my screen now?
Yes, it's coming.
Okay. Okay, just briefly, I mean, ENCQOR program is a partnership between the government of Canada, Quebec, Ontario, and 5 anchor firms, Ciena, Ericsson, Thales, IBM, and CGI. And that focus on the research and innovation in the field of 5G. This next slide, which is the main slide, it's just I'm summarizing what we have in 5G. For sure, you've heard a lot today, and thanks for all. So as you know, the 5G is a kind of it's end-to-end transformation for the whole network. It's all part of the network have run under like a new architecture to bring new services. Depends on the requirement. So it's not only it's more than only radio part. It's also all parts of the network. So there is new changes in the access layer, in the virtualization, and that bring new architecture, as I said. So here at ENCQOR, we have a network. We have 5 hubs in Waterloo, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec. This network is been now is connected and it's up and running and so on. For the radio part, we have 3 different categories of bands. We have the low band, we have the mid band, and the high band. That to serve different application. Depends on your application. If your application needs high throughput, you need millimeter wave. That means high band. If your application is just you don't need a lot of data and so on, you can maybe NB-IoT Cat-M1 is sufficient for you. You can use it. You will save energy. And so it depends. It's flexible. When we designed the network, we tried to accommodate as many as possible of the use cases. Where your application resides can be anywhere. It could be in the cloud, could be in your office. You can bring your equipment to the office, or it could be in the edge compute. The edge compute is very now it's very like a hot topic for the 5G, since it brings the computing as near as possible to the data generation that you can where you can process it. So in brief, 5G network connected, up and running. We can provide you with devices like wireless devices. If you are developing applications, we can provide you with phones, with routers, with for NB-IoT, even with some kits. And where your application, you can keep it in your cloud. We can provide you with resources if you need on-core compute, if you are looking for a few millisecond latency. Eventually depends on your application. The network, we try to accommodate as many as possible. We are open to discuss any of your application. We are open to support you. We have a technical committee. I'm part of the technical committee. We can discuss with you. And later on, when approved, there are people in the hub itself that they can technically support you. Thank you, and that's in as brief as possible.
Thank you so much, Hassan. This is very valuable. If any of the audience has questions, feel free to contact us later on. We can give you more information about all these details. Back to you, Janice.
Thanks so much, Farhan and Alex and Hassan. So that concludes today's program. Again, I'd like to thank so much Adam, John, and Dan for their willingness to participate today, their preparation to make today extremely informative and useful to all of you in the audience, and their willingness to kind of reveal some of their vulnerabilities as companies, and how these programs and platforms have helped to address some of those vulnerabilities. So thank you very, very much. And we won't give out your email to everybody because I'm worried that you could get bombarded with questions. But if any of the audience members would like to get connected or to learn more and have specific questions to put forward, please send them to either Farhan or myself, and we will filter them accordingly. or direct them accordingly to the different participants today. So once again, thank you, and I wish you a wonderful remainder of your day and week.
And
Thank
stay
you.
safe, everyone.
Thank you.
We will talk very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.